Hey guys, it's Kieran, and as promised, this is my 2018 Hip Hop Shoutout video. I'm going to be talking about a bunch of albums that didn't make it onto my top 10 list. If you haven't already seen that video, please do go and check it out before or after this one. I'll link it in the description below. I'm not going to talk about every single album that I heard last year. That would be an extremely long video, but I am going to go through some of the ones that I still thought were pretty good or decent enough to warrant some attention and just give my thoughts on those quickly. I'm going to start with albums that just missed out on the list that I very nearly put in the top 10, and then I'm going to move into a discussion of a bunch of other albums in alphabetical order that were still decent but not close enough to the list to be up in that first category. Okay, so the first of those albums that just about missed out on the top 10 list is Earl Sweatshirt's Some Rap Songs. I really considered putting this in the top 10 list. This is Earl's third studio album and it's pretty short. There are no tracks over 3 minutes and only 3 of the 15 tracks past 2 minutes. There's experimental production, intricate lyricism as we expect from Earl, and this album kind of feels like a new direction from him from his past material on Doris and previous albums before that. Some of my favourite tracks include Nowhere to Go, December 24th, and The Mint featuring Navy Blue, and I hope Earl continues in this direction. Next is the album DiCaprio 2 by J.I.D or J.I.D. This is his second studio album and it features the trademark fast flows that we've come to know from him. It's a pretty ambitious project as well, and there's lots of good variety on it, some good features as well, especially from J. Cole on the song Off D's. And my favourite songs include 151 Rum, Just the Other Day, and Despacito 2. Definitely recommend giving this album a listen again, it nearly made my top 10. Another great album from 2018 was Lil Wayne's The Carter 5. This is Weezy's 12th studio album, and I think it's a bit of a return to form, to be honest, after some pretty unmemorable projects in recent years. It's packed with great songs including Uproar, Let It Fly featuring Travis Scott, Hitters, and Start the Shit Off Right featuring Ashanti and Mac Main. I did think it was a little bit long at 87 minutes, which leads to some filler, but like I say, those highlights really do make this a pretty great album. Another one that nearly made the list is Playboi Carti's Die Lit. This is Carti's debut studio album, and it is pretty much trap perfection. It is fun, mindless, there's incredible production throughout, which is mostly handled by Pierre. Yeah, like I say, this really is pretty much anything you could want from a trap album. I think there are great features from Skepta, Uzi, Young Thug, and others, and some of my favourite songs include Long Time, the opening track, Lean For Real featuring Skepta, Shooter featuring Lil Uzi Vert, Fell In Love featuring Bryson Tiller, Chopper Won't Miss featuring Young Thug, among others. Okay, next up we have J-Rock's Redemption. This is his third studio album released back in June 2018, and it is a dark, cohesive project. J-Rock's deep voice and hard-hitting bars are present as always. I think a little bit more diversity and a bit more ambition on the narration could have given him a classic and still could. I hope he sort of goes in that direction in future projects. But again, this was a great project. Some of my favourite songs include King's Dead, which was obviously released in support of Black Panther, The Bloodiest, Rotation 112th, and East Side Tales. Another great album is Anderson .Paak's Oxnard. This is his third studio album and was released back in November. It's funky, soul-inspired hip-hop, as we expect from Anderson .Paak. I personally preferred Malibu, as I think most fans and critics did. I kind of felt that was more cohesive and enjoyable, but this is still a good album with some good songs, namely Tints featuring Kendrick Lamar, Who Are You, and Mansa Musa featuring Dr. Dre and Coco Sarai. And finally, for this list of albums that nearly made it into the top 10, we have 21 Savage with his album I Am Greater Than I Was. This is his second studio album and was released back in December 2018, one of the later releases of the year. I feel like it's a massive improvement of his 2017 Issa album, something that was foreshadowed by Without Warning, the project that dropped at the end of 2017 with Offset and Metro Boomin, and also some great features on Metro Boomin's album and elsewhere. Like I say, the lyrical improvement is very clear, the energy is up, but it's still cold-hearted and murderous, although it does get personal on some songs as well. For example, Letter to My Mama. But my favourite songs from this album were A Lot, Out for the Night, Ball Without You, and 4L. Okay, continuing now into some of the other albums that I enjoyed from last year. And we're going in alphabetical order by the artist name, which means we start with 6ix9ine's album Dummy Boy. This is a stupid, outrageous, but pretty fun debut album from 6ix9ine. The energy levels are high throughout, which make up for where it lacks in creativity and lyrics. There are also good features, which I think 6ix9ine kind of needs on a track. He kind of struggles when he's on his own. Some of my favourite tracks include Stupid featuring Bobby Shmurda, TikTok featuring Lil Baby, Mama featuring Kanye West and Nicki Minaj, and Waka featuring A Boogie with a Hoodie. Next up we have A$AP Rocky's Testing. This is an ambitious experimental take on cloud rap for A$AP Rocky's third studio album. It was mostly overlooked upon release by fans and critics because I think not all the ideas were fully formed or perfected, but this was still an interesting direction that I'd like him to pursue further. My favourite tracks were Distorted Records, A$AP Forever Remix, Praise the Lord featuring Skepta, and 143rd. Okay, next we have the first of 2 projects released by Black Thought. This is Streams of Thought Volume 1. This is, a display of his extreme lyrical prowess on this short 5-track project. Volume 2 was also good, but I think this was the better one. You might have seen Black Thought do that long freestyle on Hot 97 where he freestyles for like 11 minutes or something crazy, and this kind of just shows how impressive of a rapper he is. My favourite songs from this very short project are 215 and Dostoevsky. Next up, we have Brockhampton's Iridescence. This is their fourth studio album, and it's kind of a point of transition as they leave behind the Saturation series that brought them to fame, and also their member Amir Van, who left the group last year. It follows in the footsteps of Saturation 3 in that it's a bit more experimental, but it lacks the catchy songwriting and the new ideas that made the Saturation trilogy so incredible for me. That's why it didn't break into the top 10 of my list. But still a good album. My favourite tracks were Berlin, Wait, Jover, and Honey. Next up, we have Cardi B with the album Invasion of Privacy. This may not have warranted the Grammy nomination that it got, but I think it was still a strong debut album with lots of great tracks and production. I think it was kind of overhated in light of the Grammy nomination. The lyrics do get introspective and talk about her come up, her relationship, and Offset's infidelity, while still maintaining the braggadocio of a trap album. Best tracks on the album, of course, Bodak Yellow, Be Careful, I Like It, and Moneybag, which were all huge singles last year. Okay, next up we have Czarface and MF Doom with the album Czarface meets Metal Face. This is a meeting of the minds with Sevenel, Esoteric, Inspector Deck forming Czarface and coming together with the legendary British-American rapper MF Doom. And while I don't think it reaches the heights of some of Doom's solo work or the work of Wu-Tang, I still think all of them perform really well, and it's a fun listen. If you like those artists, this is definitely a good chance to hear them coming together on multiple tracks. Best tracks for me were Metal with Metal, Nautical Depth, and MF Czar. Okay, then we have Death Grips with the album Year of the Snitch. I wasn't sure whether to count this album as hip-hop. It's their sixth studio album, as it's one of their rockier releases, but it's still as experimental and powerful as ever, with brilliant performances throughout, of course, from all the members. If you're into experimental hip-hop and experimental, almost rock music, then I would give this a chance. Best songs on the album for me were Black Paint, Ha Ha Ha, Shit Show, and The Fear. Next up, we have Dr. Octagon with the album Moose Bumps. This is a weird, eclectic album full of bizarre and interesting lyrical themes. There is a lot of horror imagery, talking about the apocalypse, talking about medicine and medical procedures and so on. Definitely a weird one if you're into that kind of thing. Give it a go. Best songs on the album, Octagon, Octagon, Polka Dots, and Area 54. Okay, then of course one of the biggest albums of the year, Drake's Scorpion. This is his fifth studio album technically, and it's a double album. And if it was a single album, honestly, I think it could have made my top 10 list. There are so many great pop rap songs, especially on the first side of the album, that show off Drake's flow, his melody, and his punchlines perfectly. However, the album, especially the second R&B side, is extremely bloated with numerous forgettable tracks. That's why it doesn't land anywhere near the list. But still, best tracks on the album that you've probably already heard: Non-Stop, God's Plan, 8 out of 10, Can't Take a Joke, and Nice for What. J. Cole's K.O.D. Kids on Drugs is the next album on my list. This is his fifth studio album and a return to form for me after the somewhat sleepy For Your Eyes Only that dropped a couple years back. Many topics are explored, including drug use, addiction, and taxation. It still doesn't quite keep my attention throughout the whole album, to be honest, but I know a lot of people love this album. Best tracks for me were K.O.D., ATM, and 1985 Intro to The Fall Off, which I'm looking forward to already. Then we have Jean Grey and Quelle Chris with the album Everything's Fine. This is a heady, lyrical album featuring great chemistry from both and laid-back delivery as well. Obviously, both of them not just partners on the tracks, but also partners in life, so that's why the chemistry is so brilliant. There's also a great guest verse from Hannibal Buress, the comedian, on Oh Shh, and a great Nick Offerman appearance on the track Everything's Still Fine. This is a very humorous album, definitely recommend if you're into more conscious hip-hop, that kind of thing. Best songs on the album, My Contribution to This Scam, Gold, Purple, Orange, and Zero. Next up is Logic's album Young Sinatra 4. This is his fourth studio album and, in my opinion, the best album he's released since his debut Under Pressure. The fourth and final entry into the Young Sinatra series as well, following three mixtapes: Young Sinatra Undeniable, and Young Sinatra Welcome to Forever. This is a fun, fast-paced album with lots of great idea. It's less bloated for me than The Incredible True Story and Everybody. Best tracks on the album: Everybody Dies, Wu-Tang Forever, which features all of the Wu-Tang Clan on it, which is a really amazing thing to have on your album, Street Dreams 2, and Legacy. Lupe Fiasco's seventh studio album, Drogas Wave, is the expansive follow-up to his 2017 album, Drogas Light. This is a concept album with lyrics referencing black history, especially slavery, but also religion, black leaders, and more. It is pretty lengthy, and there's definitely some filler in the album, which is nearly 98 minutes long, but still one of the most ambitious albums of the year, I would say. Some of the best tracks for me were Gold versus The Right Things to Do, Haile Selassie featuring Nicki Jean, Stronger also featuring Nicki Jean, and EXO featuring Troy Irons. Next up, we have Mac Miller's fifth studio album, Swimming, of course the last to be released in his lifetime following his tragic death less than a month later in September 2018. The album addresses his breakup with Ariana Grande, his healing process, and other thoughts on life. I didn't find it quite cohesive or potent enough to justify a top spot, but it's certainly an endearing album nonetheless, especially in hindsight, of course. My favourite tracks on the album were What's the Use, Self-Care, and So It Goes. Next up, we have Mick Jenkins with his second studio album. This is Pieces of a Man. It's a thematic, lyrical album from the Chicago rapper, discussing themes such as sex and religion. There's beautiful production throughout from producers such as Kaytranada and Black Milk, among others. And my favourite songs were Gwendolyn's Apprehension, Padded Locks featuring Ghostface Killer, U-Turn, and Understood. Then we have Meek Mill with the album Championships. This is a triumphant return from Meek Mill after spending 5 months in prison from November 2017 to April 2018. It talks about his experiences with the criminal justice system, and although there is some filler in the 69-minute album, I thought it was overall a pretty solid effort. My favourite songs on the album were Trauma, Respect the Game, Going Bad featuring Drake, which was of course a huge single and still gets played as I'm recording this video in 2019, and With the Shits featuring Melly. Next up is Metro Boomin's Not All Heroes Wear Capes. This was a surprisingly good collection of tracks from the St. Louis producer, mostly good features and of course excellent production as we expect from one of modern hip-hop's premier producers. My favourite tracks on the album were Overdue featuring Travis Scott, Don't Come Out the House with 21 Savage, 10 Freaky Girls also with 21 Savage, and Lesbian with Gunna and Young Thug. Then we have Nas with his album Nasir. This is his 12th studio album and probably his most relevant in years, being the 4th release of Yeezy Season 2018. There is intricate lyricism as we expect from Nas, confident flows on display, whether he's talking about police brutality on Cop Shot the Kid or womanizing on Bonjour. Favourite songs on this album were Not For Radio featuring Puff Daddy and 070 Shake, Cop Shot the Kid featuring Kanye West, Bonjour featuring Tony Williams, and Everything featuring The Dream and Kanye West. I think this album was a little bit overlooked, to be honest. Maybe it was overshadowed by Daytona and Ye and Kids See Ghosts, but I still think it's a pretty good album, and it's very short, so I recommend you give it a listen. Ocean Wisdom dropped one of the brightest hip-hop albums from the UK in 2018. I'm talking about Wizville. Blisteringly fast flows separated by simple, catchy hooks is what you find throughout this album. Best tracks are Don, Revin, I Ain't Eatin' and Tiptronic in my opinion. If you haven't heard this and you're looking for a British hip-hop album from 2018, give Ocean Wisdom a try. It's definitely worth your while. Post Malone came out with the album Beer Bongs and Bentleys. This is his second studio album and was even bigger than Stoney, a huge success for Post Malone. I think it's a legitimately good pop rap album. You know, you've probably heard all the songs from it, but the best songs were the singles Rockstar featuring 21 Savage, Psycho with Ty Dolla $ign, Over Now and Better Now. Rich the Kid came out with his debut studio album, The World Is Yours, last year. It's a pretty standard trap album, but I think it has some good highlights. It's not going to blow you away, but if you somehow miss it and you want that kind of flavour, definitely give this album a listen. Best tracks were New Freezer featuring Kendrick, No Question featuring Future, and End of Discussion featuring Lil Wayne. Then we have Sir, at least I think that's how it's pronounced, with the album November. This is more of a R&B or neo-soul album, but still it's calm, cerebral, and does have elements of hip-hop as well. It kind of reminds me of a Daniel Caesar album at some point, so if you're into that, definitely give it a try. My favourite songs on the album were Something Foreign featuring Schoolboy Q, The Evils, and Dreaming of Me. Then we have Smino with the album Noir. This is, again, kind of an R&B leaning hip-hop album, but definitely calming instrumentals, a really listenable flow, and a good rhythm throughout the album. Best songs on the album for me were Clink, Summer Salt featuring Barry, and We Got the Biscuits. Definitely give this album a try. Ski Master Slump God came out with his album Stokely. This is his debut album and builds on some great mixtapes that he's dropped over the last couple of years. Obviously, it has Ski Mask's fast flow and eccentric lyricism in probably its most cohesive form yet. Definitely recommend you give the tracks Nuketown featuring Juice WRLD a try, as well as Foot Fungus and Faucet Failure. Okay, last few albums now. We have Teyana Taylor's KTSE. This is the second studio album from Teyana Taylor and the fifth and final release from Yeezy Season 2018. Great production from Kanye, complements Taylor's strong singing voice and melodic flows. Definitely give these songs No Manners, Rose in Harlem, and WTP a listen. You may have heard that last track, WTP, definitely one of the weirdest singles of 2018. But overall, this was again a very good short album. Then we have Tierra Whack with the album Whack World. This was an interesting concept for her debut album because there's 15 tracks and they are a minute each. The album is 15 minutes long, so literally 1 minute per track. But there were lots of interesting vignettes and ideas found throughout those 15 tracks, so definitely, feel free to drop in and out of this album because it's so short you can kind of explore as many tracks as you like. Personally, some of my favourites were Cable Guy, Hungry Hippo, and Pet Sematary, but really you can't go wrong. Just pick any track and it's only going to last for a minute anyway. Then we have the Vince Staples album FM. This is technically an album, his third studio album, but it's really short. Doesn't make it any less potent. There is a radio station theme throughout the album that's fleshed out with skits from LA radio host Big Boy, not that Big Boy, another Big Boy, which makes the album very humorous and cohesive. Lots of great songs on the album, many of them very short, but some of my favorites were Feels Like Summer, New Earl Sweatshirt, Run the Bands, and Fun. And finally, the very last album that I want to talk about is YG's Stay Dangerous. This was released back in August and is the third studio album from YG, and it delivers exactly what you want. There's hardcore, violent lyricism throughout with references to the Bloods, but YG can also craft a tune that makes it supremely listenable. Best tracks on the album for me, Handgun featuring A$AP Rocky, So Woo, Big Bank, which you've probably heard featuring 2 Chainz, Big Sean and Nicki Minaj, and Too Brazy featuring Mozzie. And that is it. That concludes my shout-out list. I know that was a lot of albums that I went through very, very quickly. Just sort of giving my quick overview. Hopefully that was of use to you. It might have helped you see an album that you missed from last year that you want to go back and check out. If there's any albums that you'd like me to give further opinions on, feel free to DM me. But yeah, those were some albums that I enjoyed from last year that didn't make it onto my top 10 list, but were still enjoyable and worth a listen. That's it for the list season for this year. It's somehow the middle of April, but I finally got through it. I'm going to be, of course, doing this again next year, so stay tuned for that in 2019. And yeah, thanks for watching if you made it all the way to the end, and I'll see you next time.